What's up, welcome back to Nowstalgia. Dave here with my best TV shows of 2024. Going to go through my top 10 shows of the year, as well as some honorable mentions, some shows I missed. Of course, make sure you come back, see the links below for my best music of the year, top 10 songs, top 10 albums, as well as my best movies of the year as well. And of course, make sure you subscribe because next year we will be doing TV reviews and movie reviews, keeping it moving, keeping it going. So I'm going to jump right into my top 10, starting with number 10. Every show I'm going to have on the list this year, I've already reviewed the season in full when that aired earlier in the year. So for extended thoughts, of course, go back, check those reviews out. Nevertheless, let's jump right in with number 10, which is FX's What We Do in the Shadows, Season 6, the sixth and final season. This season literally just wrapped up. I just posted a review about this season last week, so I won't go too long on Shadows. But to me, this was an excellent end cap for one of the most consistently hilarious comedies in recent times. I think Shadows will go down. It's just an absolute gem, just a beloved comedy series, excellent casting. The bits never got old. They always found new material, new ways to find amazing humor out of the central concept. It really never got old. And the show also managed to really sustain itself and its appeal despite largely staying the same throughout its entire runtime. They even have a really, I think, excellent meta reference to some of that real life commentary about the show in the really great finale with season 6. So yeah, Shadows has been on my list a few times before in the past for its past seasons. Also, one of the rare shows nowadays that actually comes out every single year. We literally got it the last 6 years. I mean, it's so rare these days. But yeah, what a gem. Gonna miss the show. Really funny. And season 6 is definitely up there as one of the best individual seasons of that series. Number 9 for me is The Boys season 4 on Amazon Prime Video. And it's funny to me because The Boys season 4, I think, is pretty obviously the least effective season of The Boys, but that is inevitably a high bar. It's a really excellent series due to its obvious and often on the nose commentary, comment on real life and how we see that manifested in this show. Even a lesser version by The Boys standards is still a great season of TV. I think the central appeal of what The Boys does and why that commentary is so effective, is so prescient, remains with this season, even if I think more than anything, The Boys season 4 is setting up a lot of interesting questions to be resolved in the fifth and final season. It's almost a bit of a interstitial season for a series that maybe wasn't originally envisioned to go 5 seasons, and then they stretched it out because it's a big hit. That's just my speculation. But regardless, Anthony Starr's performance as Homelander is the star of the show once again. Frankly, it's Emmy deserving if you ask me. I wish it got even more love than it already does. But yeah, The Boys, I think people know it's a massive show at this point, the biggest show on Amazon, and I think for good reason. And it's especially in the era of superhero malaise, the era of superhero film box office in pretty regular and across the board decline. The Boys really stands out as what you can actually accomplish within that genre when you have more adult themes, willingness to have an R rating, things like that, but also just think really smart writing. So yeah, shout out The Boys season 4. Number 8 is True Detective Night Country on HBO, True Detective season 4. This show is, I think, a bit polarizing, at least online. There's at least a vocal faction of True Detective fans, quote unquote, that didn't like this season. And yeah, it stands out for some of those obvious reasons that it might piss off certain types of people online. Namely, it was created by a woman and it stars 2 women. Yeah, I understand why some people might not like that compared to, of course, True Detective Season 1, Matthew McConaughey, Woody Harrelson. It's different. However, True Detective Night Country is an excellent use of the anthology series format. A show like this was probably not going to be greenlit unless it was, put into the True Detective framing. And I think HBO, looking at this night country concept was really smart to, take this show on. And when you cast a big time movie star who's having a bit of a career revival these days in Jodie Foster, and you pair her with someone who's a bit more unknown but equally compelling on screen in Callie Reese, and I think you have some real fireworks. And this is a show that has a mystery but isn't actually really concerned with the initially presented mystery. I think the appeal of what's going on in this show begins to evolve. There's almost like a audience fake out. Again, can be polarizing when the show storytelling wise goes that way. But I thought this was, I think, a really interesting use of the True Detective again, because the characters that you do have in the show, the main ones that are focused on, they're largely broken lives, and how they are existing within this town of Ennis, Alaska, that is so supernatural and also broken, living in the night country, literal darkness all the time. I found it quite compelling. I certainly didn't really see where it was going resolution wise, but I think it did really work, and I'm looking forward to more True Detective, especially kind of in this mold, because I think it's a little different, a little more high minded, and I think it's better for it. Number 7 for me is House of the Dragon season 2 on HBO. I mean, what more can you really say about just the sheer excellence of Game of Thrones on HBO? I adored House of the Dragon season 2. I thought this was a level up kind of across the board from season 1, which I also liked, which was also on my top 10 2 years ago. But season 2 to me, I mean, it just continues everything you like about Game of Thrones, with it, the palace intrigue, the smart writing, the excellent casting, characters all over the place that you're interested in, and some amazing spectacle. The Battle of Rook's Rest comes to mind. I think there's just so much fun to be had with the Dance of the Dragons, the Targaryen Civil War. I've been saying this the entire time because it's true. It is just really compelling material for Game of Thrones. And yeah, is the best still yet to come if you know what's going to happen? Absolutely. I think there were some people that got a bit frustrated where season 2 did and didn't go, in terms of seemingly not having the juice and the episode count to really get to the next big event. Thus, a character like Daemon, played excellently once again by Matt Smith, but Daemon is largely sidelined in Harrenhal for most of the season. To me, that was actually a really smart use of the script to write around the show's off the common challenge regarding certain characters have more things to do than others, and you have to progress other characters at a greater rate than you do some of the other ones. So the plot is not this linear thing across all of our storylines, and everything that happened with Damon and Harrenhal, I actually thought was a brilliant way to have Matt Smith still be one of the stars of your show. He's going to be a featured starring member of the season. He's certainly going to be paid for every episode, regardless of whether he's in them. This was, I think, pretty great. And yes, did it spin its wheels a little bit and get a bit tiresome by the end? Sure, I'm completely sympathetic to that. But I thought it was a pretty great choice, honestly, all things considered. And I really can't wait for season 3, because I mean, I think there's so much here. There was great Aegon material. I thought the Dragon Pit, terror episode, basically a Jurassic Park for 20 minutes. I thought that was fantastic. I mean, there's so many highlights on this show. The addition of some other characters like Adam of Hole. I mean, the list goes on. I thought it was a really excellent season, and just still over the moon. The House of the Dragon is keeping it going like Thrones never left. It's been great. Number 6 for me is The Bear season 3 on FX. Now, this is a bit of a drop for The Bear on my list, which was top 3 in its first 2 seasons, and that's because this is the most polarizing, the least popular season of The Bear without question, and that's because The Bear season 3 is very obviously spinning wheels, holding hands, interstitial season, all of those things getting us to the 4th and final season. It's not confirmed to be the final season, but it's pretty obvious that this was going to be a 3-season show. They stretched the 4 because it was a hit and an Emmy darling, and thus you get The Bear season 3, which still has so many of the excellent qualities that make The Bear season 1 and 2 absolute bangers, and that's why it's still on my list. the excellent casting, the ensemble, tremendous. We all know that. Io Debris, Jeremy Allen White, Ebmos Baccarat, Colin Zayas really popping this season as well. John Bernthal in the flashback once a season. We know how Lionel Boyce. We know how great the show's actors are. The writing on this show is absolutely incredible. As we know, Christopher Storer and the team, like the creativity, is on full display there. And even in a season that clearly is holding back on lasting character development and character growth. And as a result of how heavy the show gets at times, this is not the most enjoyable season to watch, straight up, of The Bear. Definitely has less humor than the first two seasons. I think despite all that, like, just it's operating on such a high level, and I still found it, like, unlike just about anything else you watch, that even if it really doesn't satisfy at all to the degree of the first two seasons, what it is on its own merits is still very, very good, and that's why it's on my list at number 6. Number 5 for me is Pachinko Season 2 on Apple TV Plus. Also a bit of a drop. I had Season 1 a lot higher. Season 2 is not as strong as Season 1, but Pachinko Season 2 is still really excellent. I mean, this is a really compelling show because of its sheer scope. I think the storytelling is very ambitious. Obviously, this is a book adaptation, but telling two storylines at the same time, one in the World War II and post-war era Osaka, Japan, and then the other in the late 1980s, early 90s Tokyo, and spending time with our central character Sunja in two very different stages of her life. It's hard to pull off, and I do think that the war timeline, the 40s 50s timeline, is a lot stronger and more consistent than the 80s timeline. There's just more meat there. There's just more, I think, richness there. Just a bigger story. And the 80s storyline, I think, is a bit more straightforward and perhaps a little bit less interesting. Although I think Anna Sawai really pops once again in a small supporting role, much like season 1 with the Great Kanto earthquake flashback episode, one of the bar none great episodes of TV ever. Season 2 kind of runs that back. This time we have a really jaw-dropping, once again, episode about the dropping of the bomb in Nagasaki. I think across the board, though, with Season 2, there's a lot of satisfying character development and character payoff, really kind of across the ensemble. There's just a lot to really be impressed with. I wish this show was more popular than it was. It does not have strong ratings, but all we know. Still has not been greenlit for a third season. I'm not super optimistic about it because it is an expensive show to make, but hopefully Apple will let it fly once again, even though we've largely adapted the book now through these first two seasons. Really happy that I made the time to watch this show, if this is all we got, because it's, I think, just really excellent craft across the board, and I think a really compelling, moving story with some great acting, some great writing. Number 4 for me is Tokyo Vice Season 2 on HBO and Max. Man, Tokyo Vice leveled up across the board with Season 2. Season 2 is an absolute banger of a season. Unfortunately, it is the last season, but I think the series ended on a really satisfying note. This is a show that impresses on a number of levels. It actually got to film in Tokyo, which is incredibly rare and hard to pull off. A great story there on its own, so therefore the show looks absolutely incredible. But this is an awesome show just kind of about work and character dynamics, and the fact that it's a period setting, I think, really takes us back and keeps it moving. But Sho Kazumatsu really popped on this series as Sato. He's incredible in Season 2. The show also does, I think, a really good job of handling the fact that its ostensible lead character, Jake Adelstein, played by Ansel Elgort, doesn't come across as a white savior or like a white POV character. He's just one of the characters, one of the ensemble. And unsurprisingly, the dynamics of Yakuza, ground wars mixed with media coverage and the police is incredibly pulpy and entertaining. Like, this season really knocked me out. I think it's a absolute banger. This show is criminally underwatched, and I do hope that this show develops a cult status over time. And I think there's a chance of that because, of course, there are high-profile people involved. Elgort, Ken Watanabe, of course. So I'm hopeful. But yeah, I mean, for a 2-season gem, blink and you'll miss it type show, I mean, it's really hard to match up against a show like this that unfortunately also got completely blanked at the Emmys both times, just like Pachinko. Yeah, shout out Tokyo Vice. Really impressive level up this year. Number 3 is Mr. and Mrs. Smith on Amazon Prime Video. Now we know is actually a season 1 of an anthology series, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. This show was, I think, like the first like true like absolute gem of the year. Came out a while ago at this point, but man, this show really knocked me out. Obviously, there's a lot of hype and anticipation and build up to this series. At one point, Phoebe Waller-Bridge was involved. Her and Donald Glover kind of split creatively on this, and what you get, despite the obviously homage and reference to the Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie film of 2005, but what you get in this series is, I think, an incredibly deep, vast show where, yes, it's about modern day hitmen partners who are married for their job but aren't actually in a real relationship. Like that is actually not what this show is about at all. The show is about your relationship to work, your relationship to your spouse, how those things mix. This is a amazing travel show, absolutely beautiful. Two incredible performances, some of Donald Glover's best acting work ever outside of Atlanta, and he has amazing chemistry with Maya Erskine, who really blows you away on this show. This is a show that's funny, it's deep, it's dark, it has brief moments of great action and chase and whatnot, but it's the emotional stakes and the emotional payoff that's like the true plot progression on this show, and the fact that it's all this is happening within the genre framework of hit men doing their job. It's just an absolute gem. I can't wait to see what they do at season 2, which will actually have all new actors, of course. But yeah, absolutely love this series. Number 2 is Industry season 3 on HBO. This is the best season of Industry, a show that I already adored, a show that continues to get better with every season. Mickey Down, Conrad K, the creators of the series, they definitely have next. I think this show has such audaciousness, such a willingness to change what it is, what its priorities are, and is not afraid to shake up the board and flip the board over for that matter, in terms of like what happens to Pure Point at the end of the season, for example. But this season, you have Ken Leung's Eric finally be a fully fledged member of the cast, and absolute fireworks throughout the season. He's incredible. And Mahala Harold's Harper is now kind of flipped around and becomes the boogeyman on the season, a role Eric previously inhabited. Of course, I think everything between Yasmin and Rob is, I think, really compelling, and the way that resolves is heartbreaking. I think Harry Lottie, excellent presence throughout the show, handling a lot of difficult material for sure. And then the Yasmin character, again, a character that's been able to kind of ebb and flow as the show has progressed. But I think everything that's gone on with her and how through her character, this show really tackles class and class expectations. Unlike it hasn't really done that at all in its first 2 seasons. And of course, the core premise of the show, just the high stakes world of high finance in London, fucking rules to watch on TV. And of course, Industry season 3 also has one of, if not the greatest episodes of the entire year, namely, I believe it was episode 4 or 5, the Rishi centric episode where he goes complete on tilt, and due to his gambling addiction. Just incredible stuff, uncut gems on TV, effectively, so good. And what this show has done with the Rishi character, who really starts off on the show as really just a side character for comedic relief. I mean, it's been absolute blossoming. It's incredible. I need HBO to pony up and like get behind this show at the Emmys, because this is their horse. Like, this show is insane. Like, I just can't say enough good things about it. I had a lot to say when I did the review. Check that out. But yeah, shout out Industry season 3. It's crazy in the sense that this didn't actually make it as my number 1 show of the year, but that's because my number 1 show of the year is an absolute masterpiece. And of course, coming in at number 1 on FX is Shogun, which now we know it's Shogun season 1. Shogun is a stone cold masterpiece. Go down as one of the best shows of the 2020s without question. This show knocked me off my feet every single week. An absolute triumph given how long this show took to get to the screen, such a long development and expensive production. Um, a lot went into making this show, and everything about it works completely. The period detail with the production design, the costume design, the attention to historical accuracy, the casting, whether it's the great Hiroyuki Sanada, the hilarious Tadanobu Asano, or just the absolutely striking Anasa Wai, or kind of out of nowhere tour de force performance from Cosmo Jarvis. The casting's insane. And then the writing on the show is great. This is effectively Japanese Game of Thrones. Like the show is unreal, and I think the drama on the show is so rich the entire time, and all of the character developments, all of the plot beats, everything lands, I think, with such effectiveness. There's a reason this show absolutely cleaned up at the Emmys this year. Anna Sawai and Sonata both winning acting Emmys. I mean, to me, like, it's an unforgettable show. I had a lot to say about it when I did the season review. To me, it's been so heartwarming to see this show really blossom and get all those awards, because I think when it first came out, it started to pick up steam and become a bit of a hit quite quickly, which is not what I saw coming. But I think to see the rallying around it, right? The first show of its kind, a show in a foreign language to win Best Drama Series at the Emmys. Like, it's historic, but it's historic for a reason because it's just fucking excellent. Of course, season 2 presents a lot of challenges in terms of what characters can return. We know Sonata will be back as Toranaga, so we'll see. But yeah, I mean, even if season 2 will have a really tough act to follow, I think season 1 is really going to stand the test of time. Just an immaculate season of television. Kind of easily my number one. Basically, as soon as I got a few episodes in, I was like, it's going to be incredibly hard for this show to be topped. And it turns out it was not topped. So yeah, shout out Shogun. Now I'll get into my honorable mentions, some shows I missed as well. But before we do, let's just quickly recap. These are my top 10 TV shows of 2024. At number 10 is What We Do in the Shadow Season 6 on FX. At number 9 is The Boys Season 4 on Amazon Prime Video. Number 8 is True Detective Night Country on HBO. Number 7 is House of the Dragon Season 2 on HBO. Number 6 is The Bear Season 3 on FX. Number 5 is Pachinko Season 2 on Apple TV+. Number 4 is Tokyo Vice on HBO. Number 3 is Mr. and Mrs. Smith on Amazon Prime Video. Number 2 is Industry Season 3 on HBO. And number 1, the best show of 2024, is Shogun on FX. So I'll get to my honorable mentions in just a second, but I want to shout out 3 shows in particular that I want to see. I haven't seen yet. I mean, it's been hard to make the time. Obviously, consuming so much TV, so much movies, so many movies as well. And I think these 3 shows in particular had a chance to make my list had I seen them. One would be Black Doves on Netflix, the Keira Knightley, Ben Whishaw series that came out just a few weeks ago. I just didn't have time to see it, but I'm really looking forward to checking it out. Also, pretty similar, only came out like a month ago on FX, would be Say Nothing, the IRA, Northern Ireland drama series. Looking forward to seeing that. And then also came a bit earlier in the year on Netflix would be Ripley from Steve Zalian, starring Andrew Scott. Those 3 shows, Ripley in particular, I will be making time to see, but I just haven't seen them yet. Also want to shout out Squid Game Season 2 on Netflix that premieres on December 26th. That's technically, of course, still this year. I will be considering that for the 2025 list, but looking forward to it, of course. Squid Game Season 1 made my top 10 a few years back when it came out. In terms of nominations, what just missed the cut for me, the latest season of Hacks on HBO, Sympathizer on the HBO, Three Body Problem on Netflix, which I liked a lot. Not a perfect show by any means, but I thought it was pretty enjoyable. I think some of the IP shows actually were pretty solid this year. Lord of the Rings of Power Season 2, Dune Prophecy, X-Men 97. You also have The Penguin, pretty popular. Agatha All Along, one of the highest rated Marvel Disney Plus series. I think Star Wars Skeleton Crew has actually been pretty solid, ultimately. Even The Acolyte, which had a lot of flaws but took some big swings, things to appreciate about it, all things considered. A show that I still kind of enjoyed for what it was, but ultimately was a bit disappointed in it. Like, this show did not sniff my list at all. But I think, years ago, people were kind of hoping it would be a show that could make top 10 lists. That would be Masters of the Air on Apple TV Plus. Of course, the ostensible follow up to Band of Brothers in the Pacific. The show was fine, but it didn't really hold a candle to its predecessors, unfortunately. I think in terms of my biggest pure disappointment, it's probably Expats on Amazon Prime Video. That's the Lulu Wang series starring Nicole Kidman, set primarily in Taiwan. Yeah, I think just story-wise, it's an adaptation of a famous book. Story-wise, it just didn't really grab me. I just don't think it really kind of comes together, unfortunately. I was also quite let down by the Netflix Ayrton Senna series. Senna is just incredibly surface level, just not high quality at all. I also haven't seen yet. This will be wrapping up next year, so I'll talk about it next year. But The Agency on Paramount and Showtime, the adaptation, the English adaptation, or remake rather of the French spy series, The Bureau. So looking forward to seeing that. And yeah, I watched about 30 shows again this year. It's hard, but it's not as hard as it used to be. Peak TV has passed. We're making less shows than we used to, and that is, due to the economic environment, the entertainment environment, and how those things match. And I think it's for the best, right? Not every show gets a fair shake when it's existing around 400 other scripted series. And maybe making a few less shows helps the cream of the crop rise to the top, and I think it's ultimately better. Obviously, the average consumer doesn't notice a difference because there's so much still to watch. But I think for me, someone who tries to see a lot, it is nice to have, I think, less things to really worry about. But let me know, what was your favorite show of 2024? What would make your top 10? Leave a comment, hit me up, let me know. What was your most disappointing series as well? What are you most looking forward to seeing next year? I'll probably do a separate segment on the 2025 TV shows that I'm most anticipating. So come back for that. And of course, again, make sure you come back for top 10 albums, top 10 songs, top 10 movies, top 10 K-pop songs. Got more best of 2024 on the way. Make sure you subscribe, youtube.com/nostalgiapod, linktree.com/nostalgiapod. See links below. I'll link the top 10 lists for the other mediums as well, linked below. Get all that, and I'll see you next time.